Welcome to AI Unraveled, your daily strategic briefing. It is Tuesday, March 10th, 2026. I'm your host, Etienne Noumen. This episode is brought to you by Area and DjamgaMind. If you want to skip these ads and get straight to the intelligence, join our premium DjamgaMind feed at the link in our show notes. Today we are unraveling a billion-dollar pivot. Yann LeCun is tired of just language models and is building a startup to model the physical world. But as the tech evolves, the politics are exploding. We have a historic legal statement from the top scientists at Google and OpenAI, joining forces to protect the industry from a Pentagon blacklist. We're also talking about the delay of Apple's next big hardware move, and why your browser might be safer today thanks to Claude. Let's get into the news.
If you are feeling completely overwhelmed by the fire hose of AI news lately, you are definitely not alone.
Oh, absolutely not. It's a lot.
It is a lot. It feels like every time you blink, the entire landscape just shifts right beneath your feet. I mean, today is March 10th, 2026, and the speed at which things are moving is, well, frankly, it's breakneck.
Breakneck is the right word for it, yeah.
You're out there trying to keep up, prep for your meetings, stay well informed, but there is just this overwhelming amount of noise. And that is exactly why we're here.
To cut through that noise.
Exactly. For today's deep dive, we've taken a massive stack of sources, articles, research papers, insider notes. We're covering billion-dollar bets, groundbreaking robotics, and some truly staggering legal clashes.
It's quite the mix today.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we've distilled it down to what actually matters to you.
Because when you lay all these seemingly disparate updates out on the table together, a very clear, very urgent narrative emerges.
A very clear narrative.
Right. We are witnessing a fundamental pivot, not just in the underlying architecture of the technology itself, but in the geopolitical warfare surrounding it.
Which brings us to our mission for today's deep dive. We're tracking something we are calling the industry's sovereign line in the sand.
I like that framing.
Thanks. Because the AI industry is no longer just generating text on a screen. It is stepping out into the physical world, and at the exact same time, it's fiercely defending its boundaries against government intervention.
Yeah, the technology is crossing a major threshold. It's going from passive observation to active engagement.
Active engagement in our actual lives.
Right, and the companies building it are realizing they have to define the rules of engagement today before legacy institutions step in and do it for them.
So starting with the end of just language, let's look at the data from our sources today. Yann LeCun's new startup, AMI Labs, has just raised a staggering $1.03 billion.
Which is just a massive number.
Massive. And that's at a $3.5 billion pre-money valuation, meaning the company was valued at $3.5 billion before that new cash even hit their bank account.
For a company that barely existed a year ago.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this. What makes this so different from the large language models we've been using for the last few years?
Well, the core technological philosophy over at AMI Labs is a complete departure from the status quo. I mean, for the past several years, the entire industry has basically been running on the engine of next token prediction.
Right, guessing the next word.
Exactly. And for an audience following this space, you know that LLMs are brilliant at statistical language modeling. But because they lack a persistent memory of spatial relationships or physics, they hit a hard reasoning ceiling.
Because they just know the text.
Right. They hallucinate when you ask them to reason through complex physical constraints because they only know what humans have written down. They don't actually understand the physical reality underlying those words.
But wait, if they have read the entire internet, don't they already kind of know how the world works based on all that text?
They know how to describe it probabilistically.
Yeah.
Think of it like a person who has read a million books on how to ride a bicycle.
Okay.
They've memorized all the physics equations. They can write a beautiful essay on the history of the Tour de France.
Yeah.
But they have never actually sat on a bike.
I see.
So the moment they hit a real-world pothole, that text-based knowledge is completely useless. Yann LeCun and AMI Labs are shifting the paradigm to something called world modeling.
World modeling.
Yes. Instead of just learning from human language, these models are designed to learn from reality itself.
Learning from actual physical reality.
Observing physical constraints, temporal relationships, cause and effect, basic Newtonian physics.
So to translate this for you listening right now, imagine a system that doesn't just know how to describe a ball dropping because it read the word gravity in a textbook.
Yeah.
It inherently understands gravity. It understands physics and momentum because its underlying architecture simulates physical reality.
And what's particularly revealing here is the operational strategy they are taking. Alexandre Lebrun, the CEO of AMI Labs, stated explicitly that they are starting with fundamental research.
Not just rushing a product out.
Exactly, not quick product launches. He admits it could take years for these world models to go from theory to commercial application.
A long-term play.
It is. It's a play to fundamentally change how machines understand our universe, which really sidesteps the current rush to just push another iterative chatbot to market next quarter.
And the market clearly believes them. I mean, look at the backers. Bezos Expeditions, Nvidia, Samsung, Toyota Ventures, Eric Schmidt.
It's a heavyweight lineup.
A staggering coalition of capital. And it makes total sense that Toyota is in there if we are talking about physical world modeling for autonomous vehicles or robotics.
Absolutely.
And surprisingly, AMI plans to open source much of their code and publish their papers. They want to keep the scientific community involved.
Which is a bold choice right now. It is. Choosing to be so open with their research is almost defiant when you look at how defensive the rest of the industry is getting. We are seeing a hard pivot toward proprietary walled gardens everywhere else.
Companies literally drawing legal boundaries to protect their sovereignty.
Right.
Which transitions us perfectly to a major political earthquake happening right now. Anthropic has just sued the Trump administration after the Pentagon blacklisted them.
A huge move.
And real quick, critical note for you listening. As we look at this lawsuit, we are not taking any political sides here. Not left, not right.
We are just looking strictly at the facts.
Exactly. Impartially reporting the facts laid out in these legal briefs to convey the arguments from the original sources and to understand why the industry is reacting so severely.
Right, because the reaction makes a lot of sense once you understand what the supply chain risk label actually means in Washington.
Right. The DoD officially designated Anthropic a supply chain risk. Why is that so bad?
Well, historically, that designation is reserved for foreign adversaries or shell companies engaged in espionage.
Oh, wow. So it's basically a corporate death sentence in federal contracting.
Exactly. And Anthropic got hit with this label not because of some security breach, but because they fundamentally refused to let the Department of Defense use their technology for two specific things.
What were they?
Mass surveillance of Americans and autonomously firing weapons.
So they drew an ethical line in the sand regarding deployment.
They did, and because of that, federal contracts are already being canceled.
Our sources show that private deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars are now in doubt. Secondary defense vendors are being forced to certify they don't use Anthropic's models anywhere in their stack.
It's a sweeping financial blow.
But Anthropic isn't standing alone in this fight. And here's where it gets really interesting.
That's the crazy part.
Over 30 employees from some of Anthropic's fiercest competitors, specifically OpenAI and Google DeepMind, filed a formal court statement backing Anthropic's lawsuit.
Unprecedented.
We are talking about top-tier researchers. Google DeepMind's chief scientist, Jeff Dean, going on the record to support a direct business rival against the Pentagon.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this specific coalition is a watershed moment for AI politics.
How so?
You have to understand the historical context. These companies are locked in a ruthless, multi-billion-dollar war. They fight for talent, compute power, market share.
The animosity between some of these labs is very well documented.
Highly documented. So for researchers at that level to unite, it shows how terrified they are of the precedent being set here. In their brief, these researchers argue that the DoD's designation was entirely arbitrary.
Arbitrary and punitive. They're arguing that weaponizing the supply chain risk label just because a company enforces safety boundaries is going to chill open deliberation across the entire industry.
Because if a tech company knows they'll be blacklisted and financially penalized for discussing safety guardrails or refusing certain military applications,
They just won't talk about it.
exactly, they will simply stop having those conversations out in the open. The brief explicitly warns that this move hurts U.S. scientific competitiveness.
Because the Pentagon's label basically implies that having internal ethical standards is a national security liability.
Right. So the industry is effectively forming a united front to push back against that narrative.
They're saying, we will build this technology, but we will not surrender the sovereign right to dictate how our creations are deployed in matters of life and death.
It is a massive high-stakes standoff.
It really is. But, while these executives and researchers are fighting over who controls the technology at a macro level, the tech itself is quietly taking over our daily workflows.
Right under our noses.
Let's talk about the agentic war.
The transition from software acting as a passive tool to software acting as an autonomous agent.
Microsoft just announced something called Copilot Cowork, which, ironically enough, given our last story, is actually built with Anthropic's models.
Right.
A Microsoft executive described it as a fire and forget tool.
Fire and forget.
Yeah. It's no longer just drafting an email for you to review. It actively analyzes your meeting calendar, decides which meetings you don't actually need to attend based on your priorities, autonomously declines them, and then writes the rejection notes on your behalf.
It executes decisions. That's the key shift. Microsoft's agent management platform, Agent 365, is going to be generally available on May 1st.
May, Ren. That's soon.
Very soon. We're moving into an era where managers aren't just overseeing human direct reports. They are managing a digital workforce of AI agents making executive decisions about time and resources.
And communication. But, as these fire and forget agents roll out, giving AI the keys to your enterprise calendar and your inbox is undeniably risky.
Very risky.
You don't want an agent hallucinating priorities and accidentally declining a crucial board meeting, or sharing sensitive internal context in an automated rejection note.
That would be a disaster.
Exactly.
Well,
Which is exactly why the need for a governance control plane is no longer optional for enterprises looking to manage this new agentic workforce safely.
and that brings us to ARAF.
For enterprises looking to deploy these autonomous agents securely, AI provides the essential guardrails, visibility, and governance you need when software is making decisions on its own.
It's critical infrastructure now.
It really is. You can find the link to learn more about AI right in our show notes.
And, moving beyond just the software layer, this agentic war is fundamentally restructuring the hardware market, too.
Oh, absolutely.
The chip manufacturers are aggressively fighting to own this personal assistant ecosystem.
Nvidia is a perfect example of this. They aren't just selling the chips anymore.
Not at all.
They are reportedly building their own platform called NemoClaw, powered by their Nemotron models, and that's expected to be announced at their GTC conference next week.
That's going to be a huge announcement.
Huge. And hey, for those of you who want high-density, uninterrupted audio intelligence to stay ahead of these massive industry shifts like the GTC announcements coming up, I want to invite you to check out the DjamgaMind ads-free premium feed. You can get pure, uninterrupted deep dives over at DjamgaMind.com.
So looking at NVIDIA's strategy with NemoClaw, they are executing a classic top-down enterprise capture.
What do you mean by that?
Well, NVIDIA is offering free early access to this platform to massive corporate giants. Google, Adobe, Salesforce.
Okay.
The catch is that these companies get free access in exchange for contributing their engineering hours back to the project. So NVIDIA is leveraging its hardware dominance to build an open-source software moat right in the middle of the Fortune 500 space.
That is incredibly smart. But the contrast between NVIDIA's enterprise play in the West and what is happening in China's consumer market is stark.
It's like night and day.
Our sources highlight an open source platform called OpenClaw, which is locally known in China as Little Lobster.
Little Lobster.
Yeah, and it has sparked an absolute cultural phenomenon.
It's a brilliant case study in bottom-up adoption. You have the biggest tech conglomerates in the region, Tencent, Alibaba, Baidu, all launching competing free installation campaigns.
Just to get Little Lobster onto consumer devices.
Exactly.
Xiaomi's CEO, Lei Yejun, publicly endorsed it. And this isn't just developers playing around with a GitHub repo anymore. The sources note that Tencent is hosting physical installation events in Shenzhen.
Physical events for an AI agent.
Yes. And the crowds showing up are everyone from retired engineers to local librarians. Everyone wants this AI agent managing their digital lives.
It has shifted from a technical niche to a strategic priority in a matter of weeks, to the point where the Shenzhen district government is actively drafting policy support to accelerate its deployment.
State-backed policy support.
Yes. The geopolitical implications here are profound. When an AI agent ecosystem goes from a developer tool to being installed by librarians with state policy support in weeks, the adoption curve changes.
It's not a normal software adoption curve anymore.
No, it goes from a typical S-curve to an exponential state mobilization. China is building an entire ecosystem of autonomous digital workers from the consumer ground up.
While the U.S. is currently fighting over top-down enterprise integration and Pentagon supply chain designation. So what does this all mean? Regarding AI's current capabilities, how fast is this moving? Let's look at the closing productivity gap, starting with digital security.
This is a wild story.
Anthropic recently took their Claude Opus 4.6 model, and they basically set it loose on Firefox's codebase alongside Mozilla's human security team.
And Firefox is the ultimate stress test for this kind of thing.
Right.
It is a deeply complex open source project, decades of human audits, robust bug bounty programs, some of the best security engineers in the world constantly probing it for weaknesses.
And Claude tore through that codebase in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It found 22 vulnerabilities. 14 of those were classified as high severity. To put that in perspective for you, that is nearly 20% of Firefox's most serious patches for the entire year. Discovered by an AI in 14 days.
And it flagged its very first flaw in just 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
20 minutes to find a needle in a haystack that human experts have been combing over for years. But there is a critical technical nuance here we need to mention.
Right, the exploits.
Right. While Claude was incredibly fast at identifying the vulnerabilities, it struggled to weaponize them.
Okay.
It tried to write its own exploits for these bugs, but it only managed to create 2 working attacks out of hundreds of attempts. And even then, those 2 exploits only worked because the human researchers intentionally removed Firefox's security sandbox.
Can you break down what that sandbox removal actually means for the test?
Sure. A sandbox is a built-in isolation feature. It keeps code from accessing the rest of your computer's operating system.
Got it.
By removing it, the researchers essentially unlocked the front door to see if Claude could navigate the hallway. So the AI is currently a brilliant inspector, but a very clumsy burglar.
A clumsy burglar, I like that. But the urgent takeaway here is the trajectory. The AI is already superhuman at identifying the flaws.
Yes.
The gap in its ability to autonomously exploit those flaws is temporary. Anthropic themselves noted that the window for human engineers to lock down legacy, human-written code bases before AI becomes capable of autonomously exploiting them, that window is closing rapidly.
Very rapidly. And that closing of the human-AI productivity gap isn't just happening in digital code either.
No, it's not.
It is manifesting in physical metal on the factory floor, which brings us full circle to why world modeling is so vital.
Yes. Xiaomi just tested 2 humanoid robots on their electric vehicle factory assembly line in Beijing.
On the actual line.
On the actual line. These robots were assigned to apply lug nuts to a vehicle chassis, and they achieved a 76-second cycle time.
That speed is crucial.
Why is that?
Because it means they're actually keeping up with the real-time, human-driven pace of the factory line. They aren't slowing things down.
Right. And in a 3-hour trial, they completed 90.2% of their assigned work successfully. What makes this so groundbreaking compared to previous robotics tests we've seen?
Well, back in February, a UK firm called Humanoid tested robots that achieved similar success rates. But those robots were static.
Meaning they didn't move around.
Right, they were bolted to the floor. Xiaomi's robots are bipedal. They are standing on 2 legs, balancing, and operating in a dynamic, chaotic, human-built environment.
Why is that distinction so important computationally?
A bolted-down robotic arm just follows pre-programmed spatial coordinates. It knows exactly where it is at all times.
It's fixed.
Exactly. Bipedal balancing requires continuous micro-adjustments in real time based on visual and physical sensory input.
It has to actually understand its environment.
Right. The machine has to constantly recalculate its center of gravity while simultaneously tracking the moving chassis and applying torque to a lug nut. Achieving a 76-second cycle time while doing all of that means the computation is finally catching up to the physical mechanics.
Synthesizing everything we've tracked today, the sheer velocity of this industry is just staggering.
It's moving so fast.
We started by unpacking AMI Labs and the billion-dollar shift toward world models that learn from the physical reality of our universe, rather than just statistically guessing our language.
Right.
We examined how Microsoft and platforms like Little Lobster are deploying autonomous agents to actively manage our calendars and execute decisions for us.
We saw the tangible results of this computation, with bipedal robots literally building our cars, and AI finding critical flaws in our most secure browsers in a matter of minutes.
And tying the entire narrative together, we watched the tech giants' fierce rivals like OpenAI, Google DeepMind, and Anthropic banding together in court,
drawing a hard sovereign line against the government.
To protect their right to build and deploy these systems on their own ethical terms without being labeled a supply chain risk.
It is a dense amount of information to process.
It really is. But before we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own.
Consider the convergence of these events. If we are rapidly moving toward AI systems that inherently learn from physical reality,
Okay.
and those systems are acting autonomously in both our digital workflows and our physical factories.
Right.
And at the exact same time, the tech giants building these systems are successfully drawing lines in the sand against government oversight.
Then who's in charge?
Exactly. Who will ultimately govern the intelligence that runs our daily lives? Furthermore, if these new world models are shifting away from structured text to learn strictly from reality, how will they interpret the beautiful, chaotic, and often irrational unpredictability of human behavior?
That is the defining question of the decade right there. Looking at the sweeping implications of all the sources we've unpacked today, the final definitive daily signal is this: the industry unites. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll be right back here to help you unpack whatever tomorrow brings.
That concludes our rundown for March 10th. The signal for today is the industry unites. When Jeff Dean and OpenAI researchers sign a brief to help Anthropic, it's a sign that the AI frontier views government interference as a greater threat than each other. This episode was made possible by Area and DjamgaMind. Until tomorrow, keep unraveling the future. And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit DjamgaMind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.